this is where things get a little bit complicated. So there's and just to kind of clarify, there's no question that Discovery Green is a public park, but because it is operated by a private conservancy, we have this question of whether or not there is state action in this case. So with that clarification, just to back up a little bit, so this park was created, almost 20 years ago by the city of Houston. All of its creation documents specify over and over that it is, created with public funds for the purpose of providing a public park for the people of Houston. As I mentioned, it's operated by a private conservancy. And this conservancy was established for the sole purpose of operating and overseeing this park. And the city of Houston, directly and also indirectly through a public park corporation. And I mean, I apologize for bringing in so many parties. It is part of one of the things that makes this case a little bit more complicated. But directly and indirectly, the city granted the private conservancy exclusive rulemaking authority in Discovery Green. And so this, the speech prohibition that's sort of, at issue in this case, this prohibition on displaying muted documentary footage, and as the defendants describe it, footage showing abuse and violence towards animals, and that's their characterization, which is really quite fascinating. All of this is attributable to the conservancy, but again, that prohibition was enacted and is enforced pursuant to authority that was granted to it by the city. And the city, again, funds the conservancy's operations. So the private security guards that the conservancy used to enforce this prohibition, it comes from funding provided by the city. So one of the most important questions that this case raises is whether or not, this private conservancy acting on behalf of the government, and not just overseeing a public park, but actually regulating free speech in that park, whether or not that is state action. Because if it's not, which is what the district court below held, that's a pretty big gaping hole in our constitutional law scheme. It means that local governments across the country can effectively evade their First Amendment obligations in public spaces simply by delegating rulemaking authority to private third parties.
Yeah, it really does. They almost act as if there's a simple answer to this, but it's really a crazy idea that they can just keep it as a public park, keep it open to the public, act as if this is the city of Houston. Well, it is the city of Houston's part of the city of Houston's gift to the citizens, right, or whatever, but that they don't have to follow the Constitution, which of course, and perhaps we should make clear right now, because I find there's an awful lot of confusion on this. The First Amendment applies to government actors, correct?
Right. And that's why this is so consequential.
I imagine a lot of our listeners know that, but does it astound you how many people think that we're all bound by the First Amendment? Can you just explain that a little bit? I mean, I've kind of said it, but
and that's exactly right. So the First Amendment binds government actors, not private individuals, and so that's why this question matters so much, because if this is simply private action, no difference, for instance, from, my inviting people over to my house for dinner and picking them out because I don't like where the conversation has turned. They would not have a viable First Amendment claim against me. And so if that's what this is, if this is private action, then there is no viable constitutional claim whatsoever. Then the conservancy, their private security guards, they can choose who can and cannot speak in Houston's premier public park. One of the arguments that was raised by an amicus organization, in this case, a friend of the court organization, and for anyone not familiar with that term, these are just, organizations or individuals who are not parties to the case, but they write into the court and say, we believe that you should rule one way or another. And we were very lucky. We had a, very, very strong showing of support from various amicus organizations. And one of the arguments that was raised is that, public parks across the country are currently operated and overseen by private conservancies. It's a growing trend in this country. And just a couple examples include the National Mall in DC, our country's most important public park. And the notion that their private security guards could exclude speakers because they don't like their speech or find it inappropriate it's ludicrous.
So has the park been used for protests or things similar to protests in the past? Is this an unusual situation, or is there a policy that there are no kinds of protests, or have other groups been allowed to protest in the park?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, we allege in our complaint and we cite to quite a few news articles and other public sources establishing that not only is, it a venue for protest activity, it's been the venue for some of Houston's most large-scale protest activity, including Black Lives Matter protests, anti-NRA protests, Tea Party protests. And, these protests have involved signs displaying all kinds of, arguably gruesome imagery, things like that. So this is certainly not unique. What happened here was just that we had the security guards who felt there was something unique about the imagery here.
Yeah, so that establishes that it was about this particular type of protest and the content, really, the quote unquote the content of
right,
it.
Right.
Now I'm deciding the case for you. So my understanding is that on this occasion they were first approached by security guards. Is that right? And can you tell us what they had to say?
Yeah, absolutely. So Darius and Faraz, this fourth incident, as I mentioned, it happens three other times within the preceding year, but on this fourth occasion, they did. What they did was exactly right. They were both incredibly courteous and respectful police officers, and they also filmed their interactions. So what you see is, they're engaging in a cube of truth. And you actually see that there are people engaging in political speech right across the kind of the walkway from them. And so the private security guards approach first. They're familiar with them at that point. They've had multiple interactions in the past, as I described. And, rather than simply leaving as they had done in the past, Darius and Faraz explained, listen, we've spoken with an attorney. We've confirmed on the Discovery Green's own official website and through their public property records that this is indeed a public park. We have every right to be here. And so they kind of engaged with the security guards more than they had in the past. And again, as you can see in the video footage, they did so incredibly respectfully, incredibly courteously. And then eventually the police officers, officers Douglas and Whitworth, who are defendants in this case, were called to the scene, and they're the ones who ultimately, made Faraz leave and arrested Jabash.
Now, I have down in my notes that they were told, tell me if this is right, that whether certain speech is permissible is determined on a case-by-case basis, and their manager would have to come and look at it. That's, wow.
Yeah.
And did that happen? Did the manager come and look at it?
Yeah. So yes and yes. So the security guards, explained this is, handled on a case-by-case basis. It's based on the subjective determinations of our manager. The manager was eventually brought over and explains that, look, the content of the videos is the problem. They use the word content about 8 different times on video. They also, describe this prohibition that they are purporting to enforce in terms of its content, its subject matter. We're seeing violence and cruelty towards animals, and that's not permissible. And then ultimately the manager, we see that he kind of goes off camera for a while, comes back and relays that he has spoken with the president, or now former president of the Conservancy, Mr. Barry Mandel, who's also a defendant in this case, who ultimately gives the order that, look, we don't want them here. If they remain, it's a trespass, and gives the final order to the law enforcement officers to arrest Jabash.
And the video in this that Darius and Faraz took, it's very unusual to have a First Amendment case with statements this clear on video.
Yeah.
One of the security guards says, "Sure, you have First Amendment rights, but we decide what they are." And this
Oh my
idea that
gosh.
an individual is going to determine whether speech is acceptable or not on a case by case basis. There's a specific rule in free speech doctrine about unfettered discretion chills speech. Because if people don't know before they go to the park, is he going to be in a bad mood and I'm going to get arrested or not? That's going to chill speech before the fact.